Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to talk about hobby gatekeepers and throwing open the gates. So this week's talking point has come about because I had several very interesting conversations while at Partisan last week. As is to be expected, I spent a lot of the day chatting to other gamers, running games, or chatting to people who were coming up to talk to me, and we inevitably ended up talking about our latest projects, games we've played, and several times our hobby origin stories. And what struck me was how different our backgrounds were, the variety of games that we played, the diversity of approaches to wargaming we had, yet here we all were, mixing together and enjoying broadly the same hobby. Now, Richard Clark of Two Fat Lardies recently wrote in Wargame Soldiers and Strategy magazine about the cult of negativity that can keep the gates of our hobby shut to some new players. So, never being one to ignore serendipity when it's screaming in my face, I've decided I would revisit the topic of gatekeepers in our hobby. Often seen as a barrier to new players, I think they have the potential to act instead as conduits into the hobby for wargamers of every type. So in the world of hobbies, any hobby indeed, gatekeepers are a recurring phenomenon. These individuals, often well-intentioned, take it upon themselves to decide who does and does not belong to a particular community. They set rules, define standards, create boundaries, whether consciously or not, about what it means to participate correctly in a given hobby. Now, while gatekeeping can sometimes arise from a desire to preserve a hobby's integrity or its history, it often serves to exclude newcomers and stifles diversity. However, I have an alternative view. I think we need gatekeepers, not to hold the gates closed to new players, but instead to throw those gates open and encourage new blood and new ideas into the hobby. So what exactly is a gatekeeper? In the context of hobbies, gatekeepers come in a variety of forms, and their motivations often vary. Some are veterans of the hobby, individuals who've been involved for years or even decades, and these old grognards might recall the early days of their hobby and resist new developments, dismissing them as inferior or not real compared to the original. Then there are the purists, people who adhere to a single set of rules or practices and reject anything that deviates from that standard, viewing alternative approaches as completely different hobbies entirely. Other gatekeepers may be more subtly exclusionary. Power gamers, for example, can sometimes forget what it's like to be a beginner. They treat newcomers as if they're unworthy or lacking in basic intelligence. Similarly, the mechanics might prioritise complexity and depth, viewing games with simpler rules as beneath them, or at least unworthy of serious attention. And lastly, you get the armchair historians, many who may look down on those who lack extensive historical knowledge or haven't yet read original documents, implying that without this academic grounding, one certainly cannot truly appreciate or engage in certain hobbies. Now, all of these types of gatekeepers share a common trait. Knowingly or otherwise, they block entry to new participants into the hobby. As I say, it may be conscious, it may not, but they perpetuate the idea that there is a right way and a wrong way to engage in a particular pastime. By setting themselves up as arbiters of who belongs and who doesn't, they deter newcomers from exploring and discovering the joy of the hobby on their own terms. Now, it's important to recognise that humans are tribal by nature. We seek out communities where we feel we belong, and these communities often create divisions, again, intentionally or not, that separate insiders from outsiders. This was true when we were living in small bands of hunter-gatherers, and it remains true today. However, humans also thrive on diversity, and we do build communities that are strengthened by the variety of perspective and experiences and approaches that we bring together. In a sense, the tension between tribalism and inclusivity is ever present and has been since the dawn of time. Now, the wargaming community, like many hobbyist communities, exemplifies this dynamic perfectly. It's a broad and diverse collective, but it also contains distinct tribes, each with its own customs, preferences and gatekeepers, of course. Each tribe often polices its own boundaries, deciding who gets in and who doesn't, based on how closely newcomers conform to their standards. But what if, instead of excluding people, we invited them in and allowed them to explore the hobby in their own way? Now, I like to think the hobby community hobby community is a vast, undiverse city. I've used this analogy before. It's a complex place with many different neighbourhoods, each offering its own unique experiences. And surrounding this city is a wall, and along the wall are numerous gates, each leading into a different part of that hobby. And at each gate stands a gatekeeper, tasked with managing who enters and who does not. And once inside the city, visitors can move freely from one neighbourhood to another, discovering new games, new styles, new experiences. But the problem arises when newcomers are stopped at the gate, unable to pass and join the hobby because they don't meet the expectations or standards of that particular gatekeeper that they first encounter. And in this way, the gatekeepers limit the growth of the community, turning away potential participants who might bring fresh ideas, new energy and different perspectives to the hobby. Now, of course, the rise of social media has transformed the nature of hobbyist communities, providing an almost infinite number of gateways for people to discover new hobbies. Platforms like Facebook and Instagram, Reddit allow enthusiasts to connect with others from all over the world, share ideas, discover new interests. However, of course, as we all know, social media has a dark side. It can be a toxic environment where anonymity and unrestrained expression foster behaviours like misogyny, racism and potential intolerance. All of these things can put people off. These factors can combine to make some online spaces inhospitable to newcomers. Imagine being a novice looking into an online hobby community for the first time. If all you see is negativity, exclusion and harsh judgments, why would you want to join? Social media has the potential to welcome new participants into a hobby, but only if we, its users, make it a welcoming space. The rule should be simple. If you can't say something supportive, then it's probably best kept to yourself. Ultimately, everyone should be free to get what they want from their hobby. No one should feel that they're doing it wrong because their preferences don't align exactly with somebody else's. Now, whether you enjoy historical wargaming or fantasy battles, whether you prefer skirmish games or massed armies, whether you love delving into the details of history or just enjoy playing the game for its own sake, all of these are perfectly fine. The beauty of hobbies like ours is that they are personal and only you get to decide what you want to enjoy and what your experience should look like. So how can we, as members of that hobby community, keep the gates open for new players? I think the answer is relatively simple. We need to become different types of gatekeeper. Instead of shutting people out, we need to fling open the doors, put out a welcoming sign. So that means writing blogs, making fun videos, running demo games and reaching out to newcomers without judgment or preconceptions. The goal should always be to advocate for the hobby in a way that is inclusive and supportive. Once inside, new players will have the opportunity to discover all the cool things that the hobby has to offer, and the community will grow as a result. So in conclusion, gatekeeping doesn't have to be about exclusion. We can redefine what it means to be a gatekeeper by shifting the focus from keeping people out to inviting them in. The hobby community can thrive on diversity, and by welcoming new participants we ensure that it continues to evolve, to grow, to remain vibrant for years and years to come. Now, I want to throw this topic open for discussion as always and ask, did you encounter a gatekeeper when you discovered the hobby for the first time? And did that gatekeeper hold the door shut and limit who could enter? Or did they fling open the doors and welcome you in? As always, I would love to hear your experiences, good and bad, in the comments below. So that's it for this week, just a short video for a change. The reason being that immediately after my trip to Partisan last weekend, I went away for a few days with my family, so there's been absolutely zero hobby activities taking place in the last week. I did try to get a little bit of reading done, but we had a packed schedule, and frankly I was too busy enjoying playing with my grandson to focus on anything else. And as you can probably tell, no sooner had we got home than I succumbed to a stinker of a head cold. I'm currently deaf as a post and struggling to get through this short video, but hopefully I'll be back to normal in a few days. So I hope you found today's topic interesting, and if you did, please join the conversation in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.